Hello, and welcome to the Tracie Austin Show, where we bring you the truth about the paranormal, the supernatural, and the highly strange. Without further delay, your host, Tracie Austin.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Tracie Austin, and we have a really great show for you today because my guest is none other than former FBI agent John DeSouza. But first, if you've not yet subscribed to the show at our YouTube channel, we would love for you to support us. All you need to do is click on the subscribe link, and there you go. So we'd really appreciate your following and your support with that. Now, let me ask you this question. Have you ever wondered why the FBI would perhaps consider investigating the paranormal? Well, I had no idea until I heard of John DeSouza. And amongst many things that John has investigated, the paranormal is one of them. He's also the author of these excellent books, which are The Extra Dimensionals and The Para Investigators. And we are actually giving 2 copies of these books away today, signed by John and courtesy of John, but more about that at the end of the show. Before we head over to John to find out more of his FBI career and his paranormal investigations, let's find out a little bit more of who John is. Take a look at this.
The most powerful saying in the paranormal is, "I know what I saw." My name is John DeSouza. I was a special agent of the FBI for over 20 years. And during that time, I collected what I call the real-life X-Files. The paranormal investigative shift changes everything. It is that moment when a regular investigator or police officer becomes aware that a paranormal element is in an investigation. And I've been told stories that a departmental psychologist is never going to hear. Because once that toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't get that back in. I've worked many terrorism cases and even violent crime cases across the country.
Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Tracie. It's great to be on here with you and your wonderful audience. Thanks so much. It's good to finally make this happen.
Absolutely. We're honored, and it's great that you could join us today. So from the clip there that we just saw of you in the FBI, you were 23 years of age when you first entered the FBI?
Well, recruited at 23, and I think I started serving in the position of special agent at 24 or so. I think that's it. The background process is pretty long and involved. But I was one of the youngest people hired for that position at that time. And they don't hire people at that age anymore for that position. Now the average age for the position of special agent is about 32 years of age.
Really?
It's usually a second career. They love engineers, accountants, lawyers, former teachers, former military officers, those sorts of categories.
I see.
And it's a lot of responsibility, that position.
So how come you were so special that you got hired at 23?
Well, let me tell you, it's not a question of being special. Let me admit to you that they were doing an experiment at that time, and they hired not just me, but a large group of people of the same age, more or less. And the FBI would do that every few years. They would conduct different experiments, like, okay, this year we're going to hire all attorneys, nothing but former attorneys, like I'm an attorney also. And or this year we're going to hire people just the age of 23, or this year we'll just do all engineers. Well, the 23 thing didn't work out too well. Most of the people I came in with at that age didn't really make it in the organization for very long. They weren't able to really adapt to what we had to do in the organization. They didn't make it. So that was not considered. I was one of the very few people at that age who actually were able to persist in the organization for a period of time. So I'm glad for myself, but the hiring people at that age didn't turn out well for them.
I see. So John, had you always wanted to be an FBI agent?
Yeah, I had always wanted to be an investigator, and a lot of that, came to me because of my experiences in the paranormal, even when I was a kid. And because of that, it developed my inquisitive nature, my longing to know things, and it put me on a road towards becoming a professional investigator. And there's a lot of different ways to be investigators, but the FBI is considered one of the best areas for investigation. So at least to learn the skills.
Right. And let me just talk about the X-Files here for a minute, John, because you were a big fan of the X-Files, weren't you?
Yes, I was very much a big fan. And especially as I started noticing, as those episodes went forward in the 90s, I started noticing some similarities to some of the cases that I have worked on. Things that I can't really talk about directly, but things that I recognize for sure in those episodes. And that's probably the reason why I was questioned when there was a minor scandal in the FBI where the creator of the X-Files was questioned. He was interrogated by the bosses at the FBI because they wanted to know where he was getting his information. His information on procedures in the FBI was extremely accurate. And some of the storylines, I believe, had come from real FBI cases that had occurred. And so he was questioned about that. I was also questioned about that. And I was able to say that I was not giving Chris Carter any information. However, he at some point, he talks about this today. He says that he thought the FBI was going to shut him down because they were alleging that he was getting information from somebody. And I think ultimately he advised them that he did have some information he was getting from retired FBI agents, which is fine. That's fine to do. And that can be done at any time. But people on board with the organization are not allowed to talk to somebody like Chris Carter. So, but out of that, eventually I was given the nickname the X-Man for X-Files. And that was not a compliment. I was told by my bosses that I had been demoted from G-Man to X-Man.
Do you think, John, that shows like X-Files hire consultants or FBI agents?
Yeah, I know that they do. they do, and they hire retired FBI agents, CIA guys, all the time for consultants. Movies do this too, movie productions, and it's to give information on procedures, protocols, proper protocols that are followed, and so forth. And that sort of thing just happens all the time. It's a normal course of business in the television business and so forth. And there's nothing wrong with it as long as they don't violate their secrecy oaths. To give up anything that's really substantial and is secret that should not be revealed. Right. So that's easy to avoid.
Right. You've got to be retired in order to be asked.
Yes.
Yes. Got it.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Right. Can you share with us, John, some of the investigations that you have done that have this paranormal element in them? Some of the most intriguing or prominent cases that you could share with us?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I can share probably the most impactful one that occurred is the one that motivated me to write my first book, The Para-Investigators. And that's what happened. That was the experience that it was so impactful because it affected not just me, but many, many other FBI agents and law enforcement officers from various PDs, police departments across the country. And this was the story of the Indigo Kids of 9/11. And what that was that when the terrorist acts of 9/11 went forward, in the weeks and even just days before 9/11 happened, there were reports there were reports that happened that, well, they actually occurred before 9/11, but the reports were made after 9/11 occurred. And the reports were of a nature of little kids, young as 8 years old, 9, 10 years old, who were having precognitive experiences of what was going to happen days later on 9/11. And that there were dozens of these cases, and they occurred all over the country in many jurisdictions, because all over the country we had these task forces. Right after 9/11, there's a lot of paranoia going on, and people were told to report anything, no matter how minor you may have thought it was, that could have a connection to terrorism. So here's a sample of kind of reports that we got. We had one little girl, for instance, who was on a playground, but she wasn't playing with the other kids. She was a girl about 9 years old, and she was sitting by herself in the dirt during recess. And instead of playing with the other kids, she was tracing designs in the dirt. And the teacher comes over to her, one of the teaching staff comes over to her and says, "Are you okay, sweetheart? What's going on? Are you all right?" And the little girl said to the teacher, I'm fine, I'm just thinking." And then the teacher says, "Okay, you're fine." And teacher goes to walk away. Little girl grabs her skirt and pulls on it violently and says to her, "Tomorrow, make sure you stay away from tall buildings, because tall buildings sometimes fall down, and they fall on people." So teacher just walks away from a little girl like that, chalks it up too much sugar, doesn't think about it again until 9/11 happens. Then it's something different. We have another little boy who was doing a beautiful arts and craft in his class, and on my Facebook I actually have a trailer that you may have shown that actually has the actual painting on there. And this little boy is making a beautiful finger painting in his arts and crafts class. The teacher comes over to him and says to the little boy, "Wow, that's beautiful painting. These two tall buildings are glowing, and there's like angels flying out of these buildings with like red wings flying out of these buildings." And the little boy looks at the teacher and says, "Those buildings aren't glowing. Those buildings are on fire. And those aren't people, those aren't angels, those are people jumping out of the buildings, and those red wings that's fire. Their people are on fire as they're jumping out of these buildings." So again, teacher just looks at her child like that and just kind of walks away and doesn't think about it again until 9/11 happens. Then it's a different story, and people start remembering these children. I had another little boy who was on a school bus, who always was the first little boy off the school bus whenever it would be at school. But this particular day, looks like the child hadn't gotten any sleep the night before, and he was dead asleep back there. And every other child had gotten off for school. School bus driver goes back there to wake him up. And as he goes to wake up the little boy is screaming, and wakes up the little boy, and the little boy is screaming about people jumping out of buildings on fire.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so like I said, in all these cases happened. There are dozens of these cases, and they happened all over the country.
Right, and we're going to be talking more about this in another episode that we're going to do about indigo children of 9/11. John, did the FBI study or investigate UFOs?
Oh yes, as far as they could, because FBI policy is, of course, that we can investigate anything, and we follow the clues to wherever it goes, to no matter how far. It doesn't really matter how far. The problem is we are only allowed to let's just say officially, we're only allowed to take it to the material conclusion of that case. So like, for instance, in the case of the Indigo kids of 9/11, we were only allowed to go with those kids as far as there's no material connection to terrorism. These kids, their families and their parents were looked into. There was no connection to terrorism found. And so in order to avoid the conclusion that maybe these kids overheard some adults, maybe they got the impression of 9/11 from somebody making plans. But once that was closed out and we found no connection to terrorism, then those cases had to be concluded based on that. We couldn't go any further into the paranormal possibilities. Same thing with UFO cases. Now, if you want to see UFO cases, it's very easy. I always urge people to please go to vault.fbi.gov FBI.gov, which is the repository on the internet where the FBI dumps all of our declassified files on investigations from over the last 50, 60 years. And you can just go on there, and if you go on vault.fbi.gov, you go right to it, and on the right you will see a tab that says Unexplained Mysteries. You click on that, and on the left will be UFOs. Those are UFO cases. Also, there's cattle mutilation cases, animal mutilations, which, you being from England, you're very, very, very familiar with cattle mutilation cases. And those cases are in there. There's hundreds of them, and anybody can go look at them now. And these documents are free to download, to look at, to examine. Anybody can do it. But the one pattern you will see repeating in these UFO cases, for instance, and cattle mutilation cases, and all the other parts of the paranormal that are in that repository, is that you'll see it's a material investigation based upon material clues, evidence, but there has to be a material conclusion as well. And so officially, the FBI can only take it to, well, this UFO case appears to be of undetermined origin. We can't say for sure. We can't find a material explanation for it, but now we have to say undetermined and leave it at that.
Right.
So that's the pattern that you'll notice in these FBI cases over and over again.
I see. John, stay with us. We just have to go to a quick commercial break here for our sponsor, but we will be right back.
The Tracie Austin Show is sponsored by Heaven to Earth Spiritual and Transformational Cruises. For more information, visit heaventoearth.com.
Hey, John, welcome back with us.
Thank you, Tracie.
I wanted to ask you, in regards to the FBI, now what about remote viewers? Have they actually hired remote viewers at any point?
I'm sure that they have at some points, that there have been remote viewers. I'll tell you, I have in my book, The Para Investigators, I have an involvement that the FBI had with a remote viewer. It was not voluntary on their part, though. It's the story I have in my book, The Para Investigators, which is called Death from a Broken Heart. And it is the story of Richard Jewell in the 1996 Olympics. And what happened was that Richard Jewell was just a regular security guard, and he was also a paunchy guy with a southern drawl. Didn't seem like anybody was going to accomplish very much in life. But in 1996, in Atlanta, Georgia, there was an Olympic village that was set up after the Olympic Games, which was a big old festival party in the park at 1 a.m. that had thousands of people streaming through it, like a party atmosphere. There were athletes there with media that were being interviewed by the media, and it was just a crazy scene with thousands of people running back and forth through this park. And Richard Jewell happened to be there, and he happened to spot one of these giant hiking bags. And it was one of these things that stands on its own. It's got a frame. It's about 5 feet tall, more than 5 feet tall probably. And it's just sitting there in the middle of a walking path, which was being used by hundreds and thousands of people at that time. And he immediately, at this moment, he became the greatest investigator who ever lived, because he sprang into action immediately, and he declared it a suspicious package. He got onto the horn to his superiors, told them what's going on, and he immediately threw up a police barrier around it. He threw up a barrier around the hiking bag, and he started telling people to get out of the area, get away from here. And people weren't listening to him. So, and this is on video and on CCTV, he started really going crazy. He started really getting hysterical and screaming at people to get out of the area, don't go near this package. And finally, people started listening to him, and they started avoiding the entire walking path and getting out of that area. Well, sure enough, the bomb, the hiking bag, it exploded a short time afterward, and it killed one person, which is a tragedy. But if he hadn't done what he did, it would have killed dozens of
More
people,
lives would have been lost.
including children.
Right.
So he was a great hero. Now, the problem was that there were investigators on the ground who were reviewing those videos that I just told you about and kept on looking at them, as I did too. As I looked at these videos, and as these investigators looked at these videos, they came to the same conclusion that I did, which is he knew it was a bomb.
Right.
In months afterward, he himself also said he absolutely did know it was a bomb. And you could tell in his voice, as the pitch and the hysteria in his voice. I think at some point he even said, folks, this is a dangerous package. It could go off at any moment. So he absolutely knew it was a bomb. Now, where I differed was that the investigators who are just material investigators, who can't look beyond the material world,
Right.
they concluded the only way he could know it was a bomb was because he was the bomber.
Put it in there, yeah.
Exactly. Because they know he never looked in there. They
Right.
know he never touched it.
Right.
He never physically looked in it. However, my conclusion is very different. I know that he knew it was a bomb because he remote viewed into that package, into that hiking bag, or he had a vision of some kind,
Right.
or he had some paranormal ability that he exercised in order to see what was really in there. And that's what led to his certainty that he knew it was a bomb. That was my conclusion. But their conclusion ruined his life because, as you know, as everyone knows, for 88 days after that, he was excoriated in the press, global media. His name was dragged through the mud. He was presented as the wannabe cop who staged this entire killing of people in order to be a hero.
That's a great shame.
And it was a travesty.
Yeah.
After 88 days, of course, we know that the U.S. attorney actually had to come forward and say, whoops, we made a mistake. He's not the guy. And later, and shortly after that, Eric Robert Rudolph confessed to being the actual bomber, and he did not appreciate somebody else taking credit for his work.
Right.
So that's an example of remote viewing in law enforcement, which is not welcome.
No. But I just wanted to ask that question because, I didn't understand or believe that the FBI would even sort of investigate the paranormal, but this is what they do, and you're evidence of that,
Yeah, and they do it involuntarily at times. Sometimes they do it before they know what hit them, because these things come up suddenly.
Right.
And that's what I explain in my books. What I try to tell people, how sudden these things happen.
Right. Well, let's talk about your book for a moment, John. The Extra Dimensionals. In this book, you actually say that the key to understanding everything is extra dimensionality. So, can you explain to our audience what you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that we live in a world where there is a world that is functioning and operating just beneath the surface of materiality. There are things that are going on that we are not supposed to know, and it's happening all around us, and it affects our lives every single moment. And yet we are being distracted to what is the big game, to Democrats versus Republicans. We are being distracted to other things that don't really matter. And so extra dimensionality is just a method of understanding that alien visitors, they're not physical. They are actually coming to us from other levels of reality, from other dimensions.
Right, and you actually say, John, in chapter 25, Gateway Earth, you wrote, it is a great gift to understand what the alien visitors truly are, that they are EDs and not ETs.
Exactly. Well, because it's the beginning of understanding what is really going on in our world, which is so well hidden. It is so hidden under layers of deceit and distraction that goes on all the time. And yeah, if we can just understand that alien visitors, they're not physical. They are from other dimensions. if you begin to understand that, it begins to put a lot of other pieces into place for us in understanding the world around us, and that's why I always say that.
So, John, do you not believe then that we are being visited from anyone in our solar system, our galaxy, our universe? They are specifically from another dimension.
Yes, I do believe that, but I have to add that it's obvious as we look around our solar system and around our galaxy that there was a time when alien visitors were absolutely physical, and because you can see when you get honest imagery from Mars, from the moon, we can see the remnants of civilizations, of grid lines that are there. We can see civilizations that were built there. So obviously there was a time in the past, before the recorded history of man, when obviously there were alien visitors all over, and even on Earth as well, but more or less permanently. Yeah, they were. And they were there, but something changed. I don't know exactly what it was, but something changed so that they cannot be physical now. That's what it is.
Do you think then, John, that our space program is looking in the wrong direction? Do you think it's a total waste of money? Our mutual friend, Stanton Friedman, God bless him, who's actually 83 years of age today. So happy birthday, Stanton.
Happy birthday.
Yes, he talks about the SETI program as silly effort to investigate, which I love, because he's saying that we're being visited from outside of our own plane of existence. Do you agree that SETI is just a whole ruse?
I do. I don't. I love when he says, I don't remember, Columbus sending a message in a bottle to the people in the New World before he invaded them, or Cortez sending some sort of message in a bottle, or sending some smoke signals to the people, the Aztecs, before he invaded them. It's just not. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to make sense. The whole idea behind SETI. But
right.
But I will tell you this: the entire space program, and you're going to see a huge push for space program, for space travel in these coming years. And the reason has nothing to do with the benefit of mankind at all. If you want to see what I'm talking about, go see a movie. See a movie called Passenger with Christopher Pratt. That is just basically a 2-hour commercial for. There's no reason for that movie to be made. It's just a 2-hour commercial for sending your kids out into space as experiments. It's just terrible. But it's a waste of time for us, but not for the nations. The nations that are pursuing this agenda, they want to move out into space,
right,
and they want to find weapons. They want to mine these planets out there. They want power. That's what nations always want.
Right.
They want power.
Right.
And this is a way for them to get power. But they're not expecting to find any alien visitors out there.
Right.
But they are expecting to find their civilization, the remnants of their civilizations. They're expecting to find alien technology, weapons, alien weapons, things that can help the nations to gain power. That's what they're looking for.
Right. Well, let me ask you, John, we have a couple of questions here from a viewer who wanted to ask you a few things here. This is from a lady named Joan, and she says when she was 12, she was awoken by 5 entities wearing solid grey bodysuits and wearing fedora hats. They didn't look like typical alien beings, and wants to know why the fedora hats. Do you have any idea on that?
That's interesting. From the cases that I've studied and the cases that I've seen, the gray aliens tend to be the low functioners of this world. They tend to be very low functioning, and sometimes they are easily confused. Sometimes they are disorganized, and sometimes they wear clothing that they think might be in fashion and really isn't. So I could actually see that happening. When Travis Walton had his experience in 1975 in the Sitgraves, Arizona National Park, where he was logging with his crew, and he was taken aboard an actual ship, and he was brought aboard. His first thing that he was confronted with was 3 gray beings, kind of small gray beings, and they were utterly disorganized. And when he offered them some resistance, actually shoved one of them. They didn't know what to do, and they just kind of started running around the room like Keystone Cops.
I remember his experience of that. Yes.
So yeah, and then they vacated. They actually ran away.
Right.
So there have been several experiences actually that share that trait, where grays, unlike other types of alien visitors, tend to have a higher level of incompetence and not knowing what they're doing.
Right.
It's very strange. So yeah, I could definitely see the young lady's experience
right.
as being real.
Well, I hope that answers your question, Joan. We have come to the end of our show here, John, but I know that we have a couple of books here that you have so kindly autographed, and we're going to be giving them away. We have a question for our viewers to get these free books. And we want you to tell us what extra-dimensional means. Is it A, from another galaxy? Is it B, from another solar system? Or C, from another universe? And we want you to send your answers to info@thetracieustinshow.com. And remember the spelling of Tracie, Tracie, and then I will answer that for you, and we'll get your books in the mail. So in the meantime, John, thank you so much for joining us on our show today.
Oh, thank you, Tracie. It's been awesome.
What is your website that our viewers can go to?
It is JohnTama.books.com. John, T like Tom, A-M-A, M like Mary, A, books.com. That is my website. But people should also check out my Facebook, my Twitter, and my YouTube channel as well. You just Google John DeSouza, D like David, E-S-O-U-Z-A,
and you'll come up.
And you'll find everything on me.
Perfect. And in the meantime, folks, do check out our Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can follow The Tracie Austin Show on there. And until next time, be safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.